Hello, my name is Peter Raymer, and today I want to teach you some techniques on how to debug and solve problems in Microsoft Dynamics 365 for finance and operations. So many of the articles and videos that I've created have shown you how to build something new. However, as a developer, oftentimes you're asked to solve existing problems. Maybe a user is getting an error message, or they're taking some action in the system that is not achieving what they desired. And so it's extremely important to know how to debug code, solve those problems in a variety of different ways. So through a series of videos and articles, I want to explain and have you practice some of these techniques so that you can solve these problems for yourself. So let's get started. Oftentimes when you get an error message, you might have seen that error message before and understand how to solve it yourself. If you have, that's great. You can go through the system, find the form, find the data that you need to change, solve that issue. Other times you might see that error message and you haven't seen it before, but maybe the error message is clear enough where you understand where you need to go and what you need to do. Other times, though, the error message may not be clear enough for you to know where to go. And so debugging the code, really looking at the code, understanding what the code says, will allow you to understand where to go in the system and what data changes you need to make. And so we're going to cover a variety of different examples. Really, we'll just cover one example and one technique in this video, and you'll learn and get lots of practice over some other videos and articles as well. So to start, I recommend, if you haven't already, look at my article on how to debug. This teaches you all the processes on how to use Visual Studio, attach the process to IIS Express, add breakpoints to code, and really debug. You can also watch the How to Debug D365 Part 2 video, where I go into some more depth and explain some of those details. If you're having problems debugging, specifically getting your symbols to load, those symbols are those filled in red circles that you add with your breakpoints with F9. If after you've attached to process your symbols are these empty red circles, then I definitely recommend you check out this article on how to load D365 debug symbols. This will give you a few of those clues, a few of the options that you need to set in order to properly get those symbols to load. So that's how you debug. Let's look at an example problem and see if we even need to debug or if we can solve it using a different technique. All right, so here's problem number one. Let's pretend you're a user and you want to create a new customer. You've gone to the All Customers form that's found in Accounts Receivable Customers, All Customers. You've made it to this list page. You click New. You get this pop-up dialog right here, and let's pretend we're creating US 100, and we have the name example customer, and we give it a customer group of 80. All right, now if I click save, what happens? In my environment, I'm getting this error message, tax group for customer must be specified. Well, I could look at that error message. Maybe I try hitting save again. Nope, it's still not letting me save. I could guess maybe what that means, and I could see that there's this field sales tax group right here, and think that, okay, maybe if I populate this field with the sales tax group, it'll allow me to save. And that's great, and that's actually true. If I populate that field, the system will allow me to save. However, let's pretend for a moment I'm a user that's working for a business where I don't want my customers to have sales tax groups. Maybe it's a nonprofit, maybe it doesn't make sense for this sales tax group to be populated initially. So how do I get past this? How do I solve this error message? And so I want to walk through some techniques on how you do that. Before I dive into that, I want you to be able to follow along and figure out this example for yourself. So I want to cover how I set up this problem. I'll hit cancel for a minute. The first thing you need to do is you need to deploy a D365 Azure hosted or Azure cloud hosted development environment, and make sure you're deploying it with the demo data. So all of the default legal entities with these Contoso companies built in. If you want, you can look at my article. I guess I don't have it up here. I have another article on how to deploy a D365 development environment, and as part of that, one of the steps that you have an option for is to deploy an environment with Contoso data. Normally, if you're working for an end user, you don't want to deploy an environment with the Contoso data. You want to leave it blank and then do a database restore of your data to this environment. But if you're learning, if you've got a sandbox environment, having the Contoso data is really helpful. And for the purposes of this example and this practice, you definitely need this Contoso data. So that's step one. Step two is make sure that you're in this USP2 legal entity, or company as we call it. That's where we're going to practice this. And then step three is I've actually written a runnable class / job to set up this example. Rather than have the data show you where to set up this data in the front end system, I wanted to create a job to do it for you so that you're a little bit blind on how this works. So in order to do that, first you need to come in, create a new project in Visual Studio. So File, New, Project. Make sure you select Finance and Operations, or search for it up here if this is your first time. Click Next. Give your project a name. I called mine Debug and Solve, and then click Create to create your project. I'll go ahead and cancel out of this since I already created my project. The next thing you want to do is right click on your project, select Properties, and make sure that you're in a model where you can add your own code. So we don't want to select an existing Microsoft model, we want to add our own. So I've got one called Dynamics 365 Musings. If you want your own, I definitely recommend you follow this article, How to Create a Model in D365. That'll walk you through the steps of creating your own custom model. All right, so after you've created your model and you've set this to your own model and clicked OK, now we can create a new runnable job / class. The way we do that is you right click on this project, select Add, then New Item, and then select Dynamics 365 Items, select Runnable Class Job, and then give your job a name. So I called mine Tutorial, Debug, and Solve. But it doesn't really matter. You can call yours whatever you want. And then click Add. That's going to go ahead and open and create a class for you with the name. And it's also going to create a main method as well, since this is a runnable job. What you need to do is go and type in or copy from the article that I post in the description this code right here. This code's going to set up our problem. So I definitely recommend in this case, don't look too closely at this code. The purpose of this is essentially to, break the system or set it up in a way that we see this error. Next, you can right click on your runnable job and select Set as Startup Object. That's going to make this job run. And then finally, you can click Start, and this will compile the class and then open a browser and run this job. I'll go ahead and do that real quick. I've actually already done it, so it's not going to do anything new. But essentially, it's going to open D365. It's going to go to a specific URL to run this particular job. And then if it runs as expected, I should get a message saying that the class has completed, and I see my info log right here that says tutorial 1 setup complete. All right, great. I'm going to hit stop on this to take me back. All right, so after you run this job, you can do what I did right at the beginning, which is to go to all customers, try to create a new customer, and try to save it without populating that sales tax group and see if you get the error message. If you do, then you're all on the same page here. So I'll just show you again. I'll just type in my new customer account. I'll just make up a name, example customer name. I'll fill in an existing customer group. I'll pick 80 in this case. I won't populate the sales tax group, and I'll hit save. So now I get this error message. All right, now what can I do to figure this out? There's a few different approaches that I can take. I can debug the code, I can ask a friend, a few other things like that. But really, the process that we need to follow is really 4 steps. We need to find the place in code that this error message exists. We need to look at the conditions that cause this message to be shown. Usually it's some data or setup that's causing this message to be shown, or lack of data setup. Then we need to navigate in the D365 system to the form where we can change the data that will affect this error message. And then fourth, we need to find the place on that form that we need to change to fix this issue. So let's start with that first one, finding the code. Fortunately, when we get an error message like this, there's a technique that I'm going to teach you that works a large percentage of the time. That's really great. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this error message by selecting it and pushing Control-C. Then I'm going to go back to Visual Studio, and then I'm going to go to Extensions in this menu, Dynamics 365, and then Find Labels. Once I click on this Find Labels, it's going to show me a dialog that looks like this, and it should come kind of blanked out just like that. Normally, this is a form that allows me to find an existing label, edit the text that's shown, etc. But I can also use it to search for labels. So if I search and I paste in this message, okay, and then if I hit enter, it's going to search for this particular label in all of the label files. Now I'm kind of skipping over what a label file is, but the short version is a label ID is this @ number. It represents some text, and that text is stored in a particular label file in a particular language, in this case in English. And so by having the system's code reference this label ID instead of the raw text, it means that I can have multiple label files, each in different languages, English, Spanish, French, etc. And then I don't need to change my code. The code will always show the associated text in whatever language the current user who's using the system has as their language for their user. So more on that later. But for now, this shows us that it found one label ID for this particular error message. So that's great. The next cool thing that I can do is I can right click anywhere on this row and say find references. When I do that, the system's going to go out and look in all of the code and look for any instances where this @sys113299 exists, and it's going to show it in a little form down here. So it found it, so I'm going to go ahead and close out of this label search form. I could hit cancel or the X, I don't need it anymore. And now I see at the bottom this under this find symbol results, it's found one result. Sometimes you get more than one result, and we can look at all of them. In this case, we're really lucky, and it's only found one result in tables, cust table, methods, validate, write. So I could come up here, I could search for cust table, expand methods, expand validate right, select view code to open it up. But a shortcut is I can actually just double click on this line right here, and the system's going to automatically open up that method in the code editor, and it's going to take me and my cursor to the line of code where that label ID is referenced. And so if I hover over it, I can see that sure enough, this label ID represents the tax group for a customer must be specified. So great, we've finished with step one. We've used this technique to find the labels. We've used find references to help us find exactly where this is in code. The second step that we need to solve this problem is figure out what is the condition for this error message to be shown. And to do that, we really can just look at this if statement that's surrounding it. And almost always there's some if statement that says only show this error message, this warning, if some conditions exist. And so I can actually see that there's two conditions. One condition is it's checking a record on cust parameters table, and it's checking the field mandatory tax group and seeing if that's set to true or populated. Additionally, these ampersands mean and, it's checking the tax group field on cust table and seeing if that is not populated. So this second condition totally makes sense, right? If this is not populated, it's going to say, hey, you didn't populate your sales tax group. But in our particular user's case and their business, they don't want to populate this sales tax group. So they've purposely left it blank. They want to be able to leave it blank. So what else could we do to make sure it doesn't go into this line of code? And the answer is if we make this return false, these and statements mean that if either one of these is false or either of these three are false, then it's going to bypass this and keep going and hopefully allow the user to save their customer. All right, so let's look into this. This is our condition. Now we need to find where is the form where we can change this code or this data to make it work differently. Well, I've got this table, cust parameters. I know it's a table, but what form do I use to change data on this table? Well, we can do a similar approach as we did before with find references. I can come in here and do a search for cust parameters in the Application Explorer. And a quick trick is that normally when you're looking for a table, there's oftentimes a form with the exact same name and a menu item with the exact same name, and so we can really shortcut our approach to find this menu item really quickly by just looking for the same name. Sometimes that's not the case, and so I want to show you the slightly longer approach if this table is on a form not named after it. If that's the case, what we can do is we can find this table, then right click on it, in this case cust parameters, and I can say find all references, and it's going to look through the code and find all of the instances where this table is used. Well, in this case I actually get a lot of matches. This isn't going to be super practical. However, I know that I'm looking for where this table is a data source on a form. So I can scroll past all of these classes, get towards the bottom, and now I'm looking for a form where this is a data source, and specifically, if I'm lucky, I'm looking for a form that may be named a similar way. So if I scroll down far enough and I look at these forms, sure enough I do find one called cust parameters, and I can see that there is a data source where cust parameters is on that form. Great, now I know the name of the form that I want to look for. And so I can search for that form again. In this case, it's the same one. If it was a different name, I'd type in a different name here. Then I go to this form. After I found this form, it's kind of neat. I still need to know how to open it, right? So just because I know the name of the form doesn't tell me how to get to it in the front end browser. So to figure that out, I can actually do the same thing once more. I can say find all references, and then again I get a bunch of classes, but I know I'm looking for a menu item that would open this form. And sure enough, if I look, I find this very last option right here is menu item display cusp parameters. So there is a menu item, and if I click on it, it opens straight up for me. Otherwise, I can search for it again and find it right here in the Application Explorer and view the designer. This now is the menu item that opens this form. But again, I don't know where this menu item, that blue text, is called within the front-end browser. So I need to do this once more, and I can say find all references. And now I'm really looking for where is it on a menu. And I can see that there's actually a few different places on a menu where this menu item shows up. But one is under Accounts Receivable, submenu Setup, and then cusp parameters. So I can see it's under Accounts Receivable, this submenu Setup. If I'm curious, I can click here and confirm that the label is set up. And then if I click on this menu item and I look at the properties again of this menu item right here, I can see the label for this menu item. Maybe it's not here. Maybe it's on the menu item back one step right here. I can view that the label of this is actually Accounts Receivable parameters. So finally, I know where to go to change this data. So I'm going to cancel out of this form. Let's go there. If I click on this button, it opens up all the modules. Now I can click on Accounts Receivable. Now I know I'm looking for the Setup submenu. That's right there. And then underneath it, I know it's the first one, and I also know it's got the label Accounts Receivable Parameters. So when I click on that, that's going to open the cusp parameters form. So again, since this matches the name of our table, we probably could have guessed this and sped up this whole process, but sometimes these tables are data sources on forms that we don't recognize. So I wanted to show you an approach that will always work. All right, now we're on the form, but where do we find that code that we were looking for, that mandatory mandatory tax group flag? It could be anywhere on this form, right? So how would we go about finding it? And really, again, there's two ways that are really helpful for us to find it. One, we can go back to this table, this cusp parameters table, go to fields. We can go find the mandatory tax group field right here, and I can say find all references and then look for it on this form. And if I select it and find where it is a control, this will show it to me right in the designer, and I can see that, okay, it's in this cusp parameters form. It's under the general tab, general fast tab, under this customer tab page, customer group, and then sure enough I get to the mandatory tax group. So that's pretty neat. Another way that I can do it, which might be slightly faster, is I can open that form in the designer. Then if I'm a little bit lucky and the form control is named the same as the field, I can actually just start typing in here mandatory tax group, hit enter, and this little search is going to narrow down all of these results to only show me the form controls that match this name. And sure enough, there's only one. I can make sure that this is the field that I'm looking for, that it's tied to this cusp parameters data source and this mandatory tax group field. and here it is. And again, I can look at this path or use this preview pane to understand where on this form it is. It's in this general tab, it's under this general fast tab, it's under a customer group, and it's in here. So now I can come back to our front end form, and sure enough, general tab, customer group right here, and there's this field called mandatory tax group. Awesome. So again, what we've done is we found the place in code, we looked at the condition of what we need to change in data to make it so that this error message wouldn't show. We then found the form that controls this data. We found the field on that form, and now we can come in here, we can uncheck this and say, nope, I don't want the tax group to be mandatory. I can click save, and now we can follow our replication steps once more to see if we've fixed the problem. So I can go to accounts receivable, customers, all customers, and then I can click new, type in my new customer that I want to create, example customer name, then I can give it a customer group of 80. I can leave this tax group blank, and now I can click save and see if I still get that same warning that doesn't let me proceed. But it actually works. Great. I'm able to create a customer now. Fantastic. So all that to say, this was an example. Hopefully you can follow along and try to solve it for yourself. In many other lessons, we'll debug and find this place in code. In this case, we were actually able to find the line of code without even debugging using that find label technique. So being able to use find labels, searching for that message that you're seeing, and then using find references to find it in code is really phenomenal. Even if there's multiple places in code, you likely can click on each one, determine which one's applying for this specific situation, look at the conditions, or put a breakpoint there and debug and make sure that that's your condition. But this is really awesome that we were able to solve this problem just by using this find labels, and this is a technique that you can use to solve many error messages yourself. Okay, hopefully you learned something new. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you watching. If you liked the video, click the like button. I also invite you to push the subscribe button as well. If there's other topics you would like to see a video on, please post in the comments and I'll see what I can do. I hope you learned something new today. Thank you.